else that we eat that has wings.
That has wings. All right. Howdy, howlers. It's Sako to me and the moon, and we are reviewing a movie.
Yeah.
Yeah. For Patreon.
We don't have
any
intro.
Yeah.
Honestly, I didn't realize we were doing this live. So we're
Well,
I wasn't.
This is the record, my method of recording, so nobody's watching. It's okay.
You know what? It's okay. It's fine. I'm almost better live. I'm almost better live. You can't edit the moon.
No, but we can edit Sako.
I mean, I guess.
All right. So
you want to talk movie. About it? Hold on, we can't just jump straight into the movie just yet.
Okay.
This is a brand new project. You know what? Give me a second. Give me like a minute and a half, 2 minutes.
Okay. Do it.
So this is what we're doing. We wanted to add something brand new to the channel, to the Patreon, to the stuff, to do the things. We're doers of things. We're wearer of the hats. We wanted to add something new, so we decided we are going to review movies because we love talking about film. We love talking about horror, but horror doesn't just come in written form. It comes most presented to the public as the form of movies. So we're going to talk about movies and the movies that we like and maybe some that we don't like and why we like them, how we like them, how they apply to this, that, and the third. And we're going to talk about all the things. And the first movie we're decided to talk about, Barbarian. I don't know who directed it and all the people who started in it. And I probably should have wrote that down, but I didn't. So we're going to figure it all out on the fly because I'm sure she's more prepared than I am. When I'm the most prepared. If you've not watched our show before, then you know that I am always flying by the seat of my pants. I literally just pull things from under the hat and I just go with the flow.
So and he's trying to teach me to do the same. So I purposely did not take notes.
Which is good because honestly, we're talking about a movie and how we like it and whatnot. So it should just come from our thoughts and feelings,
Mm-hmm.
So let's roll with it. Like, are you ready at home? Because like we're ready as we're going to be, and we can just jump in to talking about.
Oh, we should talk about the system that we're using.
Ooh, that's fair. We can do that. We can do that first. You want to go into that?
Okay, so we're going to do a 4-star system.
4 stars.
Well, I was raising my hand first and then knocked it down.
1, 2, 3,
one, so there are 4 categories that we will talk about. That'll be production, writing, characterization, and theme. And each will earn a star or a fat lot of nothing. Yeah.
I'm pulling up my copy of it.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I pulled up mine too.
It's the first episode. I haven't memorized it yet.
I haven't memorized it yet. Yeah.
It was 2 days ago, and I have to remember it differently than my system for the reviews I have on my website. It's a wholly different system. So,
which will be in the description of this thing.
Right. It's available on DuanLHearn.com. And
that too.
She'll have a link for all that. Goodness gracious. Great balls fire. But here's the thing. We could say 2 thumbs up, but no. We could say, oh, it's a 5-star, 3-star, 2-star, whatever. What does that even mean? Like, how do they earn these stars? How do you earn your thumbs or whatever? If we're going to give it a grade, essentially, then there has to be a reason why it earned it. Just like when you were in school. There was a reason you earned an A, not just because. So these are the reasons. These are the categories. Instead of like going over it like in a list form right now, we'll just go over the movie and we'll discuss the process as we're discussing the process. We'll just do it live right now. Right now.
And we can edit this thing as we go, because I feel like art direction and cinematography are very similar things.
They are similar, but there's a difference between. Okay, so the first category is production. And under production, we have art direction, makeup props, and cinematography. Personally, art direction is how the set is dressed. Cinematography, camera angles. Makeup props, the difference between visual effect, like
Well,
practical effect.
art direction would be like the creative direction of the movie,
You could say that. But I mean, I look at
like
art direction.
visually. Yeah,
Well, and that's what I said.
that's why
How
we
the
discuss these things
how the set is
before.
dressed. That's what I said.
It's not just
That
the
is
set.
well, but that's what we're seeing. We're seeing the set. We're seeing the costumes. We're seeing the lighting is more into the camera angles and
And
such.
the camera angles
But
and
that's more.
the
But that's in a lot of more
color
cinematography.
grading and the
Color grading is. I mean,
cuts and the
all of that
all of
together
that.
mixed in together. But that's not just art direction. Like if that's the case, then the whole category should just be called art direction.
Well, okay.
You don't have to change it. We're going to discuss it. So,
Okay.
real quick, before we get into all of it, Barbarian is basically a movie following this girl named Tess. As she's going in for an interview, she has to stay in an Airbnb in Detroit. Turns out the Airbnb already has somebody in it. Conversations allude, story progresses, and they end up dealing with this crazy monster in the basement. And then drama ensues. And can Tess get out alive? Can she get out alive? She should have. She did. She should have. But she should have gotten out alive a lot sooner than she did. We'll get into that when we get to like second star. But that's the gist of the movie. That's the gist.
That is the basic premise. If you want to watch it, it is currently streaming on Prime.
And I suggest that you do so that everything we're saying is just contextual. We are going to spoil shit.
We're spoiling all the things.
We'll always spoil it. Like just understand that we're going to spoil things. So you should absolutely watch the movie first and then come back and watch it. Like
so pause this video now.
For you.
Okay.
Hey, we're back. Perfect timing. See how we do this show? That's how we do this. Now you're back and you've seen the movie. We're going to completely discuss it from top to bottom, in and out. But first, before we get into story stuff, we're going to get into the aesthetics of the movie, which is what me and Sako were talking about a second ago. Art direction, cinematography, color grading, and such. Sako, you are the artist. What are your thoughts?
Okay, so we're talking about production.
Yes.
Right? This is our first category. So there are a couple of shots that I feel like we should pay close attention to. They were really well thought out, which means I think the storyboard artist was super good.
Mm-hmm.
The makeup for the mother was astounding. I thought it was
looks gnarly. That mother is the creature that we find downstairs. We'll get into story stuff and the next star stuff, but it's just aesthetically, mother is just she's gnarly, and it is the way she's supposed to look. Like this is what a creature grown up and bred in a cave should look like.
4 generations of inbreeding and it's just the worst. So the makeup was awesome. The color grading I feel like was aptly done in the sense that like we had the dark and the howling and the rain and the cold and stuff like that in the very, very beginning. And then when she actually notices there's a light in the house and they get inside, there's it's
Warm.
it's warmer, right?
Yeah, I love the shot. So as what Sako was talking about is as the movie opens, it's raining, and we see this car, and it's parked in front of this house, and it's just raining. There's howling, there's noise, it's crazy, and then we look through the window. By the time we get into the window, we're in the car, and it's quiet.
Right.
And
But the
then
howling should be talked about. Like the sound design was very interesting.
sound design
In
overall, this movie was really, really good. I don't think we talk about sound design enough when it comes to horror and how important it ultimately is.
and yeah, uh, jump scares aside,
Jump
right?
scares aside, but it's one of those things like you you already know that when that music in the background starts to build up and get more high pitched, you know, bow on a violin kind of sound, you know that that's tension building. Um, but that's not all the sounds that you hear. There's the music in like low calm moments. There's again the howling in the rain. If you pull up in front of a
Screaming,
house that's dark in
like
the neighborhood and
souls
it's dark,
screaming.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's dark and it's rainy, it's like this is already uncomfortable. It's not so much like the sounds to scare you or to trigger you to be scared. It's like this don't feel right. It's when you go into a room and things ain't right, the vibes off, that kind of it's that kind of energy coming from the sound design in that opening second, that opening scene as she's outside. And throughout, like with the camera panning down to go and get into the car, those types of camera angles are all throughout the movie. Um, Doors opening and the cameras on the other side of the door, so you see um, not just the figure, the subject in the center, but you have like that dark light contrast to the part where she's in the basement and she finds the secret door. The door opens, the cameras on the other side of the door, so you have the darkness of the room that we're in, technically, and the
Hmm.
light comes from the basement where she is. So everything just kind of centers her and frames her. If you look at the poster, kind of has that framing, that rectangular framing in the center of it. If I remember it correctly, but that kind of repeats itself multiple times throughout the course of the film
It
in the most
does.
appropriate ways. Not like in
Hmm.
that, oh, we're going to reuse this tropey kind of thing over and over again. It fits. It just kind of shows you we're going from a light, safe place to a dark, unsure place. That's how I translate that.
Uncertain. Yeah.
And that is a lot of the story is that sense of feeling unsafe and
Un
uncertainty on the other side.
dread.
Yeah,
I think they cover dread ideally.
yeah,
Like, um, especially when they find the first room.
hmm
Um, like that was a turning point in
yeah.
the movie as far as
Now
I'm
you know,
concerned.
like this basement ain't just a basement. This basement is off. Some shit's gone down in this basement, and it's not cool. And
Mhm.
and we're gonna get into this when we get into Tessa's characterization, but that should have been warning signs number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. Like
Yeah,
all the warning signs
I woulda left. I
it's
woulda
over
left.
at that point. Like
Yeah.
and and again, we'll get into this more detail later, but I think when we are looking at Tess and how she responds to things in her environment, the way the camera follows her differently in different parts of the movie says a lot. And it's basically it's all the things in our first category. Bing, 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 like all stars in this first category hits all 3 points. This is clearly and obviously a thumbs up for this first section. So yeah, it definitely gets 1 star out of this.
1 star for me too. Writing, our second category, where we talk about dialogue and plot and pacing and stuff like that.
I want to save pacing almost
For
I don't know if I
last.
want to discuss it first or discuss it last, because the way this movie paces the storytelling, you almost kind of got to go through the story first to understand the pacing, or you can tell the story. You know what? We'll start with it because I think we can tell the story with the discussion of pacing. I can cover kind of plot and pacing at the same time. I know I'm long-winded, but I got this one down pretty quickly. Okay. So, first part of the movie's in essentially three parts. Call it three parts.
Yeah, 3 parts. Yeah.
First part, Tess is a young woman. She's going for a job interview. She goes to her Airbnb. The key is missing. And it turns out someone's already there. The Airbnb has been double booked. Keith, young guy, trying to be kind, trying to be chivalrous. Hey, why don't you come inside and we will figure this out? She's already on edge because none of this seems right. Why is it double booked? Who is this dude? Why is he where I'm supposed to be staying? Should he be here? Is what he's saying to me true? So on and so on. And what's really important to a lot of the things I want to say later on in this episode is that she is incredibly cautious. She is super, super aware of her surroundings and the potential of danger of being in this situation. It's a real life thing for women to have to be very so cautious, especially around men they don't know. And she is incredibly cautious throughout this whole thing, beyond her necessity. She goes inside only because she realized she doesn't have much of a choice. She was going to sit in her car, but Keith is just like, neighborhood's not safe. Don't know if you caught that. Probably shouldn't do that. He was probably right. The neighborhood's all run down. You don't really see that till the next day. In short, she's super, super cautious throughout that evening. And then the next day, she is stuck in a basement trying to get toilet paper. And she finds that room we were talking about. Finds a room in the basement. The room in the basement leads to like a spot where there's like a bucket and a bed and a camera. You can tell some shady shits went down. There's blood on the wall, blood in the mattress, shit in the bucket. Clearly, someone's been kept captive in this room. She recognizes this. She's like, I'm done. As soon as she gets out of the basement, she gets Keith and she's like, hey, man, some bad stuff's been happening in this house. I don't know what's going on. We needs to go. Keith says, I don't know about that. I haven't seen it. Let me check it out. He ends up missing. They end up in the second basement, below the basement, where we meet the creature of Mother, who had basically kidnapped him. She kills Keith. Tess screams, we go to black. We then immediately cut to a dude driving a sports car along the beach. And the first time I watched this movie, I'm like, what the fuck just happened? How did we just
and why the transition? Yeah.
Because I'm like, I don't know who this guy is. I don't know where this beach is. This is clearly not Detroit, Michigan. Like, what is happening? Turns out this is AJ. He's like an actor or producer or whatnot. Just something. He's got a new product that he's working on, and he gets a phone call from the studio that's like, basically, hey, you need to know this. The woman that's attached to this project no longer wants to work with you because of allegations against you. I don't know how deep we want to go into that. So long story short, she has allegations against him, and they're like, hey, you need to know the news is going to break tomorrow. You need to be prepared, and you're no longer part of this project. We're distancing ourselves from you. He goes to liquidate some properties because he needs money for legal coverage, and he owns the house that everything in the first part of the movie takes place in. He goes to try to figure out how to do the listing. He ends up in the basement. He ends up being caught by Mother and finds Tess. Tess is still alive. And then that's it until we get towards the stretch of the end. So do you want to like just kind of pause here and discuss how the pacing is shifted in these two sections?
How do we put this? It's like ramp up, and then drop when we switch to AJ.
Yeah.
And then ramp up, and then drop when they're in the pit.
Yeah.
And then, yeah. So there's a lot of like cliffs.
Yeah. It's like,
that,
imagine a cliffhanger within the movie.
like, not just one.
Yeah. But the best one, and honestly, I've not seen it done any better in any other movie than this, than that first transition of, Keith just gets killed on screen, brutally banging his head against the wall. And then Tess screams, the mother screams, it cuts to black, and it's black for like 7 seconds.
Mm-hmm.
And like, just think about it for like a moment. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 7 seconds is a long time to not know what just happened.
Mm-hmm.
And then you're just switching off to this whole other thing over here.
Of a guy singing along with the radio, like driving in his convertible along the beach.
It's nuts. And you're like, whoa, what is... And I think that's intentional. I think the design of that is to ramp you here, like you said, and then just drop you off into a completely safe place. Because mind you, we're in a deep part of a basement that's below a basement. We just watched someone get killed. We just met our creature. And then we're riding down the beach in our convertible, singing a weird little happy song about mongooses or something. I don't know what the song was. The song was
okay.
No, it really was like about like mongooses or meerkats or
something to that effect.
Yeah.
I feel like the dialogue in the section with Keith and Tess was excellently done.
Yes.
And then it kind of frayed at the edges for the rest of the movie. Like,
I think you get lost in what their relationship should be.
Yeah.
And they that shifts as she shifts a couple of times. But of course, we're also dealing with mid character arc, right?
Right.
So by the time that AJ meets Tess in that pit, for Tess, like 2 weeks has gone by, and she's like, time has passed. She's been captive. AJ, he's been
found the luggage, totally not weirded out by it.
He's annoyed. He's like, what the fuck's going on?
He's annoyed. Yeah.
Why is all this shit in my house? But he's just trying to liquidate. He doesn't give a damn about nothing. And that's kind of indicative of a lot of his actions later on in the movie. But the way they use these breaks to tell the story, I think, is almost masterful.
Not masterful, but there are clear sections. Like, despite being Discovery written, like, there was no outline. I like the structure of the plot. I think they rushed through some of the gnarly bits, almost to a Japanese feel. They don't reveal all of that wackiness until the like 3/4 mark when the homeless guy helps them out.
Yeah. Again, this is one of the reasons why you should watch the movie yourself, because there are little elements that are important, but not necessarily important for what we're specifically discussing. But you'll see these, like the homeless guy plays a really big role uh, in the course of guiding the movie, but not directly in a sense.
Yeah.
Very indirect. And that's actually something really interesting to have a character that so indirectly impacts the movie. Like
Mhm.
the homeless man doesn't, when we first see the homeless guy is after the interview, and he's just like runs up on her because he's trying to save her from being in that house where there's danger.
Right, but he's like, hey little girl, don't go in that house.
Right.
And
Which sounds
any
creepy as fuck.
crazy dude like running at me saying,
Full
calling
feet.
me little girl.
Hey little girl, come over here. Don't go in that house. Like, the fuck you mean? No, you're not going in this house. I'm
So
the
she
fuck going in this house.
runs into the house like
Which
any
helps create, which indirectly helps create that heightened mental dread that she has while she's there. She
Mhm.
rushes her stuff together. That's one of the reasons she's so initially insistent on things being fixed. Mind, she just got home, so she hasn't used the bathroom yet.
home. Yeah.
Well, from the interview, she just got home from
Back
the
to the
interview.
Airbnb, yeah.
Right. So she just got back to the Airbnb. This happens, and this is before she goes to the bathroom to realize there's no toilet paper, to go search for it in the basement to get locked. But that interaction with the homeless guy creates that heightened fear in her that leads down this path of everything else that she ends up having to deal with. And then it gets refreshed when she interacts with the homeless guy later on.
Mhm. So I give it a star based on plot and pacing. I'm gonna say I wasn't impressed by the dialogue in the latter like 3/4 of the movie.
I think at that point, they are, mind you, you're dealing with a creature that doesn't speak. Mother doesn't speak, for real. And as you got everybody in a panic. AJ's got his mind on his money and his money on his mind, and he really doesn't care about Tess. She's a vehicle to help get away. And then the homeless guy, he deserved more credit than the movie he got.
We'll get into that more in the next section, but yeah.
But no, I would agree that the dialogue could have been better, but there's so much else going on that
I feel like someone else might have written the Keith and this is just an assumption, but someone else could have written the Keith and Tess scenes, and then someone different wrote the rest of the movie.
it's
Like,
possible, but there's also this really interesting like the level of dialogue between Keith and Tess in that first part.
there's a lot of subtext. There's a
She's being super
ton of
cautious, and he's
subtext.
acknowledging her fear. He's trying to respect her fear. It's like we're both in a bad spot right now. Like I'm being put out, you're being put out, I'm inconvenienced, you're inconvenienced. We're two people struggling in the same boat. So let's help each other and allow me to help you since I got the keys to the boat first, circumstantially. So he's trying to lead the charge in a way that's helpful, but potentially creepy. He's our first red herring of things wrong here. And it's like once he gets killed in the basement, you're like, oh, well, he's not the bad guy. All bets are off now. But that first section that you're talking about, he's very clear and concise in his words. He's I hate to use the term very well spoken, but he's also being very articulate in expressing his thoughts, feelings, and recognition of her thoughts and feelings. And that
Yes.
goes away when we're dealing with AJ as opposed to Keith. And I think
Yes.
that's more character because the character of Keith is a lot more mindful of how to interact with women versus an AJ who is clearly a predator and doesn't know how to.
He's a bro.
He's a bro.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, bitches be bitches, and I want to get the bitches, and that's kind of like his mindset on things. He goes into telling the story to his buddy on how the allegations happened, how that real situation played out, and he's at fault. He's a predator. He's guilty. Um, we're not going to sugarcoat that for the character of AJ, not Justin Long. He's fine. But yeah, I
Do
think
we
the
want
character.
to? Okay, so before we go too far into characterization, let's give the writing. I'm gonna say, yeah, I'm gonna say a star.
I'll give it a star.
Okay.
I will acknowledge the star here.
So Georgia.
Oh, I forgot the last name. Georgina something.
Georgina.
I think it's Georgina. I can look at it.
Okay. And
We have
Justin Long.
We have all the world's information.
Indeed. And Bill Skarsgård.
Yes. Georgina
fresh
Campbell.
fresh off of It Too.
Yes. Which I think was really super smart because that was.
Or was it It1?
Two, I think.
Because it was 2022 that this movie came out.
That would have been two.
Okay.
Because they were both around the time of the pandemic, like 18, 19, 20.
Yeah.
So it was after It. So we've all seen It. We've seen Skarsgård as It. And we're seeing him in this potentially creepy role in this opening segment of the movie. And that's why he works so well as a red herring for this. Like I said, it's Georgina Campbell as Tess, Justin Long as AJ, Skarsgård as Keith.
Campbell, yes. Georgina Campbell was Tess.
Yes.
Yeah, that. I clicked my tongue at the end and it didn't work out.
My mouth doesn't always work either.
Okay, so the three categories that we think about, or the three subcategories that we think about, is casting, consistency / evolution, and POV, or point of view. We just talked about the casting.
Yep.
The mother was played by one of the writers.
Matthew Patrick Davis.
Thank you. It took ridiculous amount of time to put on the makeup, like the first day, and then by the last day of filming, it only took 2 hours. But the acting was awesome, I thought, on the part of the mother. The inhumanity really was poignant.
Very apparent. In a way that, like, there's
Because
almost
people don't themselves that way.
You get to a point where you almost pity the mother, like when you get into that third segment we didn't get into earlier, where we get into the backstory of things. Backstories in the fourth category is why I stopped. So we're going to get to the backstory and then go into the ending. But there's a point where you see her as the clear villain. She is the danger, but you almost pity her because you realize she's also a victim, more or less, a victim of Frank, who is her dad. I think that's how that plays out.
Dad / captor.
Overall bad dude.
Yeah.
Again, we'll get in the backstory. That's that third part I mentioned in The Last Star. But I love the way that these people played their roles. You mentioned Justin Long and how odd that was to see Justin Long playing that.
When we get into tone and mood and message, I feel like I'll have a lot to say then regarding my thoughts. But I would like to talk about this weird slope that happened to Tess. She went from being super cautious to like adrenaline mode had her doing things that a cautious person would never do.
And this is ultimately on my review. I took points away from this aspect of the characterization, and this is the thing. When you meet Tess, we can have all of our views on women's thoughts and men's thoughts and men and women interacting, people interacting with police based on this, that, and the third. So if I want to look and give a proper analysis of a character, how do you introduce yourself to the watcher? When Tess introduced herself to the viewing audience, she was that super cautious woman that didn't want to go into that strange house with that strange man she didn't know in the middle of the night. Makes sense. She would have much rather just sat in her car and handled business, despite the potential dangers. She only went inside because she realized, okay, of the two, at least there are locks here. So even then, she was cautious. She sees his wallet later, take the picture of his ID. She has it, and she may or may not have sent it to somebody. I don't know if she did, but she at least so she knew who he was to verify that he was who he said he was. She always locked the doors behind her. When she came in and used the bathroom the first time, she made sure she locked the door behind herself first, so that he couldn't sneak in. She's checking bags, looking for weapons and such, or anything that seems off. If he's supposed to be just staying in an Airbnb, does the house look like it should if he's just staying there for a little while? And she goes through all of these checks. And then you fast forward to later on in the movie where she's it's a day later and she doesn't know Keith that well, but she puts herself into immediate danger for Keith's sake. And then she gets the situation with AJ and she gets out. She puts herself into immediate danger with AJ. And I have a problem with someone who's that cautious, that aware of her surroundings, and that attentive to potential danger, to be presented with clear and present danger and be like, meh, it's cool. There's literally a part where she gets out of the house, away from mother. She has her car keys. She's in her car and doesn't go home. And that bothers me. And I can't let that go.
It bothered me too. Because there were situations where I would have done the exact opposite of what she did.
Clearly the opposite of what she did.
Especially if I'm in adrenaline mode in fight or flight.
Yeah.
You know.
I got my reason to fight. I gotta go.
She did the fight part, I guess.
But she
And
wasn't in the immediate danger when she made the decision. That's my hard press.
Yeah, it doesn't.
For example, when she gets out of the basement, she gets drug out by the homeless guy. She finds the cop, and the cops are like, she's like, "Hey, there's someone stuck in there. You guys need to go get him. Help him out." They're like, "We can't help you. We have no reason to believe you." So they leave.
Not just that, but ma'am, get your hands off the car.
Yeah, they see her as a danger. But even beyond that, there's a point later where she breaks back into the house. Now, mind you, let's frame it here. Side note: the blue lighting in this particular scene, I think, is really, really nice. It was cool. It kind of gave a different vibe to things. and it make the vibe it created makes sense for her actions, but her actions don't make sense no matter what. She's now got back into the house. She now immediately has access to her keys. She goes straight to them. They're on the table. She goes for her keys. She has access to her stuff, but I guess leaves most of it. She walks out the door. She's in her car. Like,
end of movie.
should be the end of the movie. Drive off to the sunset. Call 911. Make up a lie. Something.
Or something.
Catch the house on fire. They'd come just because the house is on fire, and they would have seen him in the basement. He wouldn't have gotten burned. He'd been in the basement. They would have had all the reason to investigate that and hopefully found the entrance.
Oh, but the fire would have burned the rope, and
yeah, but
they wouldn't have gotten.
May have also burned the door away, which would have kept everything else around there was stone. But anything could have happened once she was away and safe.
Mm-hmm.
If you had done, even if you had at least done the start the car doesn't start. It's cheap.
Yeah.
But that would have given her an excuse to not drive away. Yeah, like let's say she had car troubles and you set that up at the beginning of the movie. And then here we are in this portion of the movie where the car won't start and she can't get away.
Mm-hmm.
That in its own right, perfect. That would have worked for me. At least you would have set it up then to give her a reason to not. None of that takes place. The car works perfectly fine. Mother comes after her to chase her once the car is started. And instead of driving away from the clear and obvious danger when you're in a fucking car, you're in the car that has gas and is on and is active and it can go in whatever direction. And you choose to just crash into her instead and wreck your car into the house. These are not smart moves. Thinking did not take place. And I just have a hard time with creating such a thoughtful, intelligent character like Tess at the beginning, establishing that intelligence and that awareness, and then totally fucking it away the rest of the movie.
Yeah. So for consistency and stuff like that, I'm gonna say no bueno. Point of view. It changes 3 times.
3 times. We have AJ POV, Tess POV, AJ POV, and then there is a section where you get Frank's point of view on things.
Oh, it's true.
As we go into the backstory, but then we come back to present day, and we're again looking back at. Tess is here, AJ's here, and we're going back and forth between our main characters until they come back together, and then we're following them. So, but there are 3 basic changes where we're following Tess, AJ, and Frank.
Yeah,
all in a logical way, all in a very story. Like it's very. We had this conversation last night when we were discussing this, and it gets really deep. I'll save it for message and tone and such. But there is good purpose and good use of POV switching. As we go through our characters, everything is sensible and logical. There's a reason to leave you here and switch you here, and leave you here and switch you here, and there's purpose in that, and the purpose works. I give it credit for the POV and the usage of point of view to help push the story forward.
As far as characterization, I'm gonna say yay on the casting, yay on the POV switching, but nay on the consistency / evolution. Tess
is inconsistent and AJ does not evolve.
Right.
So I would agree. But 2 out of 3, I'd give the star overall.
He tried to evolve. I notice in the water tower that the homeless guy is holding down the fort in,
Mm-hmm.
and he's like, I did a bad thing, and
I think he was just saving face because he was because she's alive, so she's essentially has like, oh, like she has that ability to confront him now in his bad deed, and he's saving face regardless of the fact that he's done a bad thing. I mean, and we've already established him as a shitty person, so who does things because he feels like he can and can just weasel his way out of it. Woman that accuses him of assault, and even though his lawyer says the last thing you want to do is contact her, he still says, you know what? If you know what, I feel like if you just let me talk to her, if I just talk to her, then this will get worked out. If I just have a chance to talk to her, it'll be worked out. Thinking he can talk his way out of trouble. And I think that's more indicative of what was happening there at the water tower. So I give him no evolution, no growth. And Tess is inconsistent.
Yeah, I agree. But overall, that's 2 out of 3. I'm gonna say give a star for characterization.
I agree.
Lastly, our fourth category is theme, where we talk about the message, the tone, the mood, the backstory, all of that fun stuff. Like if there was a backstory to speak of. I thought the theme, as a woman who has totally been in certain situations, especially in the beginning of the movie, and the characters were relatable, to say the least, because I have met people like that, or I have dated people like that. Of course, back in the 90s, like it was a little more, my definition of rape was different back then. So,
I think that definition nowadays is broadened appropriately. Because looking back as a guy from the 90s, I know there's a lot of things indicative of what AJ says when he's talking to his buddy. His buddy confronts him in the bar, and he's like, "So,
what
dude, like,
happened? Yeah.
he's like, you're my boy. I'm gonna believe whatever you say. I hear the rumors here, but I need to hear from you. Like, what really happened?" And he's like we hooked up. That's true, but you know, like, and then the guy, you could tell the guy was really trying to like find it for his buddy. He's like, I really want to believe the good in you, dude. He's like, was this just like a misunderstanding or something, or like did she
Did she say
change her
no?
mind, or he's like,
And
well,
he was
she said
like,
no at
well, at
first.
first.
Yeah, she changed her
And
mind. She changed. She needed some convincing. You know me, I'm persistent, and I'm like, I remember watching that in movies in the '90s. I remember watching that in TV shows in the '90s. I remember that being not so much what's directly taught, and I think we ignore those kind of things. Certain
boys will be boys. Yeah.
things aren't directly taught to us. Things are sometimes just demonstrated for us. If you watch your mom tie her shoe so many times, you can figure out, okay, cross, under, bow, bunny ear, turn, whatever. And they don't have to necessarily, you just see it and you know it. And I think that young men at the time, we saw those kinds of things where it's like, hey, baby, what's up? And she's like, I'm not interested. And she walks away. So what does the Zach Morrises of the age do? They follow her. It's like, puts their arms around her anyway. It's like, I mean, how about you and me? And she's like, no. And then what does he do? He continues to follow her. We recognize that now as harassment. But I don't think AJ is still in that bro mode where it's like, if I want her, I'll just pursue her hard enough and eventually she'll relent. and she'll give in. And giving in is the same as her wanting it in the first place. No, it is not.
No, it is not.
Let's be very clear. No, it is not. If the woman says no, let it go. The woman
Yeah.
says no, let it go. You know, there's a woman out there somewhere willing to say yes to you. Let it go. Just stop harassing women.
Mm.
But that is part of the theme of this movie because, again, movie in 3 parts. Tess sees Keith as a predator and perceives him as such and reacts the same way. Keith is innocent. Keith is a good guy. AJ is a predator and is trying to talk and walk his way out of it around it, thinking he can just, he's AJ. He can talk his way out of anything. He'd be fine. Then we get into that third segment that we haven't gotten into about Frank. And Frank is the original owner of the house. And he was the one,
like back in the 60s or the 80s or whatever
that was like 50s,
time
60s.
frame.
So we go back in the time to like the 50s, 60s. The color grading is bright and very reminiscent of like a 60s sitcom dated in that period of time. Almost very bright, Brady Bunchish almost. And you see Frank goes to the store. He needs like things like plastic sheets and diapers and things. And he sees this woman outside that he fancies, apparently. That's his next target. He follows her home. He has like a jumpsuit, like a worker's uniform, kind of like Michael Myers, like a bodysuit. And he poses
plumber's overalls, yeah.
And he poses as the water department, I think it is. And he goes, checks faucets, unlocks the bathroom window, and then lets himself out. And he preys on her later and kidnaps her, and he keeps her in the basement. And that's what's happening in the basement here. It's that inbreeding is rape, and then the children grow up, and the cycle continues until you end up with an abomination like Mother. That's why we said Mother is kind of also a victim in her own right. In this theme, the way I summed it up was perception isn't always reality, and I went with that because throughout this movie, someone looks at someone else and makes an assumption and is wrong, and it's these incorrect assumptions that keep moving the story forward. Tess looks at Keith and is wrong. The cops look at Tess and they're wrong about her, assuming that she's just some crazy homeless chick trying to get free
drugs or whatever.
Or she's tweaking or whatever. People perceived Frank in that flashback as this really innocent guy who just needed help with his kids and whatever. And even the story he gave the woman at the store doesn't really make a lot of sense. And because it's just him, but who's giving birth if it's just him? Like I feel like there's a lot about that story that didn't really click with me that he gave her. But people just saw him as a innocent, nice old man. He was just perfectly fine, and the kind neighbors looked at him and they were wrong about him. And I think that Tess looked at the homeless guy, makes a judgment call, almost kind of rightfully so, but makes a judgment call and ends up being wrong. I think so much through this movie, people are seeing each other, making assumptions. They're wrong about these assumptions, and it kind of demonstrates where making judgment calls on people's characters without actually understanding them can lead to bad things happening. And I think that's kind of the underlining message of this movie.
I think that's fair. The tone was unpredictable.
Oh yeah.
Like it was one movie, and then it was another movie, and then it was a third movie, right? So the scenes were so disjointed that it kind of mucked with the mood a little bit.
Yes, but do you think that was intentional? Like an intentional,
Absolutely. Like I
like to
mentioned,
create?
you
Yeah,
know, um, as far as the writing was concerned, um, the dark mood that was given in the basement was pretty well done, you
oh yeah,
know.
the use of light, more so the absence of light, um, color choices in lighting. Like when AJ goes down that hall in the basement and everything is dark and all you see is that one light coming from a room, the light choice is purple, like a light pinkish purple. And I could see a lot of white light coming into that in any other movie. I could see blue coming out of that room in any other movie. But that choice of pink and purple, it's one, it's an aesthetically pleasing color. I like purple, but it wasn't like a flickering of colors like you would expect from a TV because we're coming from the source of the TV in that room. But it was a really interesting choice to add such a bright and happier feeling color in such a dreadful space. I love those choices.
Yes. Um, so the backstory. Yes, there was a backstory, and yes, I had a little issue, especially the first watch, connecting the old man in the bed to Frank in the backstory. And however, they they explained it, right?
Yeah. So yeah, because Frank is in AJ's exploring the basement trying to find his way out, finds this other room, and there's an old man in a bed in this room in the basement somewhere. And uh there's like a labyrinth of caves and shit under this area. And just so strange to me. But suspend belief. Frank is
Mhm.
the old man in the bed is Frank that we get in that scene switch. And again, that's when they use those jumps to tell story. And then that's when AJ discovers tapes where he's recorded. He was the guy who had the camera in that other room. He was recording the assaults, and there's a lot of tapes, almost VHS anthology level of amount of tapes. And that's when we, as the audience, along with AJ, realized what kind of a bad predator Frank was. And I don't know if AJ recognizes himself in Frank, but I find it interesting that like AJ's the one that found Frank and made that discovery.
Sorry, I'm here.
Welcome back. Um, I was wondering about the correlation between AJ finding Frank and not recognizing it, and how he didn't seem to recognize himself in Frank. Because he recognizes that Frank's a bad person, but I don't think it clicked to him. There was
That
no
they were
clear.
that he was he probably assumed he was just that the old man was just another victim, right?
Well, no, because he saw the videos, he watched some of the videos, so he knew that Frank was the bad guy. But I don't think he saw that same bad guy in himself. Because we
No.
set up AJ as a predator as well, essentially. Like
Different kind of predator, I
Frank in
think.
early form. He's Frank in early form. Because if
Mhm.
AJ was to get out of this speculation, if AJ gets out of this court case, what makes him think that he can't just do it again and get out of it, later
Mhm.
on, or that he feels somewhat entitled to whoever he wants, which is how Frank behaves.
Yeah.
So I think it would have been nice to have like a line of dialogue, like a line or two, just recognizing, like, oh shit, I'm not this guy. Like, I'm not you, blah, 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 something in just a retrospect for himself.
Which would have shown evolution, which would have, a little bit of growth. That would have
Yeah.
been
And
nice,
that didn't happen.
but
It would be nice.
no
Didn't happen.
grew.
Oh, he didn't.
Nobody grew. So I would say give it a star. Yeah. So that would be like conclusion wise, that would be 4 stars on a
I agree.
4-star system.
I say 4 stars.
Overall, if I were to, I liked it. I did, but it wasn't like the best movie I've ever seen.
I would agree, not the best movie I've ever seen. It's definitely one of the best movies of 2022. It was one of the best horror movies. It was one of the best horror movies of 22, and it was a good movie. I think there were missteps, and I would even go so far as to say the missteps might just be what I liked and didn't like. You know, maybe I felt I could have done it better. As a filmmaker, I'm a bit critical, but you know, it's kind of what it is. It's I won't shun the movie. Obviously, we found enough in it to give it 4 stars out of 4 stars. It was a good movie. I think it told a good story. It could have told that good story better. There were some
That's
drop
fair.
offs that stopped it from being a great movie.
It was good. It was not great. Yeah.
Right.
Oh, that.
But if someone else
fair.
says it's their favorite movie, I can see why they liked it.
Mm-hmm.
So if you still haven't seen the movie, give you like a whole point to pause like an hour ago. You should have watched it already.
You probably should have watched it. Yeah.
But you should.
If you haven't watched it, then you should now. So that you understand what the heck we were talking about. It's streaming on Prime.
Now, like finish the video now, but then like go watch it.
Yeah.
Worth watching. It is worth watching.
It is worth watching. Okay. I guess that's the end of our review.
Yeah,
so
pretty thorough.
Yeah. So what did you think? Have you seen it? All the terrible.
It's cool. It's live. We're good. We can all we want to. Like it's fine. It's fine. It's fine. People want us.
Yeah, but us starts with
Right, which is why it's fine. We're fine. Whatever you thought about the movie, let us know. If you think we're completely off base, tell us how off base we are. We'll respond to it. You know, we'll react to your reaction if you want us to. Why not? Hell, it gives us a reason to talk back to you.
And I would like to think that since this is a Patreon exclusive sort of dealy, that you guys can possibly help us decide what to do next. So I'll put a poll up with some options, and you let us know what you want us to review next week.
I'll watch anything. Keep it. You don't even have to keep it horror. I'll even go so far as say don't even keep it horror. I know. But we get to look at other things through other. If that's what they want to watch, if that's what they want.
No. I will choose some horror movies, and they will choose among the horror movies to.
You can message us and let us know.
Okay. Yeah. You can also DM us. Yeah.
Let us know what you want, and we'll discuss. We'll discuss. We'll have a meeting. Like, I mean, I don't suspect anyone saying 51st dates, and I shouldn't have said that out loud, but because now they're gonna have us review 51st dates. It's fine. It's gonna be fine. But if they want to see us and get our views on something, I'm willing to watch it. I know you will. I'll come back on here. I'll do it.
Thanks for joining us. You can see us on Fridays at 2 p.m. Eastern on YouTube, Sako and the Moon. Yeah. You might want to subscribe there on YouTube because sometimes it unsubs people and it doesn't warn anybody.
It's YouTube. Do the things. Be a doer of things. Do all
With the pushing of the buttons and
hit the like button and the subscribe button. And here on Patreon, I don't know, do we have like buttons here?
Share, like, I don't know.
If you think this review is dope and you liked us, then tell your peoples about it. Have your peoples join Patreon too.
Okay, well, thanks for joining us.